by my own uncle left me homeless and devastated. I remember the exact moment my world split in two. It was the second Tuesday in March, 7:14 in the morning, and I was sitting at the kitchen table in my pajamas with a cup of cold coffee, scrolling through my emails. I was already in that foggy state of half-dread, half-exhaustion, because the numbers hadn't been looking good for months. My bakery, my pride, my entire life's work had been wobbling ever since Christmas, but I kept telling myself I'd pull through. Then I saw the email. Congratulations on your exit. The transfer has been completed. Exit. Transfer. I stared, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped my phone. The sender was the brokerage firm I'd used when I first bought into the business with my uncle, Jerry. I blinked, my throat tightening, scrolling faster, heart slamming against my ribs as words jumped out at me like knives. All shares sold. Ownership rights transferred. Funds deposited to primary shareholder account. But I never sold anything. I never signed a single paper. My entire 40% gone. The coffee mug slipped out of my hand and shattered against the floor, spraying brown liquid and porcelain shards across the tiles. I didn't even flinch. My body just went numb. No, I whispered, my voice breaking. My fingers felt foreign as I fumbled to dial Jerry. The man who had convinced me 3 years ago to build a future together in the bakery, the man who told me, "We're family, I'll never screw you over." He picked up on the third ring, his voice far too casual. "Hey, kiddo, what's up?" My stomach turned. "Jerry, what the hell did you do?" My voice cracked, shrill panic pouring out of me. Why did I just get an email saying my shares were sold? There was silence for a beat. Then a slow sigh. "Oh, that. You sold them, without even telling me?" I screamed so loud I startled my dog, who ran out of the room. "This was my income, my future, my life, Jerry." "Calm down," he said, his tone flat, almost bored. "It was just business. You weren't bringing in enough. You were dragging us down." The words sliced me open. Dragging him down? I had been the one working 70-hour weeks, baking until my fingers blistered, collapsing on flour-dusted counters just to keep us afloat. "You stole from me?" My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. "This is illegal, Jerry." He chuckled. "Technically, no. You gave me power of attorney last year when you were in the hospital. Remember, you were too out of it to handle things, so you signed it. I just made an executive decision. Don't worry. I'll cut you a little something once I've recouped the investment." The room tilted. My vision blurred. I had signed those papers when I was recovering from surgery, trusting him when he said it was just so he could sign delivery slips. My trust had become the knife he twisted into my spine. "I trusted you," I whispered, my voice raw. "You were supposed to protect me." "Business isn't about trust," Jerry said, his voice suddenly cold. "It's about survival. You should have known better." And then he hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone screen until the cold log bled through tears. My hands were ice. My chest felt like someone had reached inside and ripped me open. I wanted to scream, to smash every plate in the kitchen, to tear the walls down with my bare hands. Instead, I sank to the floor among the shards of my broken coffee mug and sobbed until my throat burned. But the devastation didn't end there. 30 minutes later, I tried to log into the bakery's bank account, only to see it locked. Frozen. Unauthorized access denied. Every cent I had left tied to that business gone. By noon, the reality hit me with the weight of a truck. Not only had Jerry stolen my shares, he had cut off my only source of income. I had rent due in 5 days, medical bills piling up, and now nothing to fall back on. And then came the final gut punch. A notification ping on my phone. I opened Instagram. There he was, Jerry, smiling ear to ear, standing in my bakery with a real estate agent and a group of strangers. The caption read, "Big moves today, excited to announce the sale of the bakery. Cheers to new beginnings." The room spun. My breath caught in my throat. He hadn't just stolen my shares. He had sold the entire business. And everyone was congratulating him in the comments. Before Jerry destroyed everything, he was the man I would have trusted with my life. He was my uncle, but only 10 years older than me. I grew up with him more like an older brother than some distant relative. When I was little, he was the one who showed up to my school plays when my dad was working late. He was the one who taught me how to ride a bike, who sneaked me candy when my mom said no. He was safe. So when he came to me 3 years ago with his grand idea to buy into a struggling local bakery and turn it into something amazing together, I didn't hesitate. "You've always loved baking," he said, his eyes sparkling with that charisma he always carried. "You could handle the kitchen side and I'll run the numbers. Family business, kiddo. What do you say?" I should have thought twice. But I was 26, still healing from a brutal breakup, desperate for a fresh start. And the way he framed it, like he was handing me a golden ticket, it felt like fate. We scraped together the money. I cashed out the little savings I had, maxed out a credit card, and Jerry covered the rest. I walked into that bakery for the first time with flour-dusted counters and old ovens and thought, this is it. My dream is real. At first it was. Those early months were brutal. I was waking up at 3 a.m. to start the dough, working until 10 at night, collapsing into bed only to do it again the next day. But there was joy in it. The smell of cinnamon rolls pulling from the oven, kids pressing their noses against the glass to pick cupcakes, customers calling me by name. And Jerry was always there, smiling, cracking jokes, talking about how this was just the beginning. "Once we're big enough, you won't have to work the counter anymore," he'd promise. "We'll hire staff, you'll just be the creative genius." I clung to that. Because while Jerry was charming, there were cracks I ignored. Like the way he always insisted on handling the finances. "I'll save you the headache, trust me." Like the way he brushed off my questions when suppliers complained about late payments. Like how he once laughed when I asked to see the books and said, "You worry too much, that's why I'm here, kiddo, relax." But I didn't push. He was family. And after all, I didn't understand accounting, I understood buttercream. Then there were the little digs that started slipping in. You know, without me, you'd never have gotten this off the ground. You focus too much on the cupcakes, you don't see the big picture like I do. Honestly, you'd fall apart without me. I told myself he was just stressed, that he didn't mean it. Because at the same time, he was buying me new mixers, surprising me with fancy ingredients, bragging to people my niece is a genius in the kitchen. The mixed signals left me dizzy, but I buried the doubts. The first real red flag came the year after we opened, when I landed in a hospital for an emergency appendectomy. I remember lying there in a haze of painkillers, Jerry by my bedside, holding papers out for me to sign. Just some boring forms, he said gently. A delivery authorizations bills, don't worry, I've got you. I signed without reading. I was hooked up to Roman for half asleep and he was family. That signature became my death sentence. But back then, I only saw a man taking care of me when I was vulnerable. When I got out of the hospital, the bakery had kept running. Everything seemed fine. I didn't even think about it. The slow slide into disaster started last summer. Sales dipped hard, inflation, competition, people cutting back. I was baking more, working harder, but the profit margins weren't enough. I begged Jerry to brainstorm with me. Maybe we do delivery, or a food truck, something to pull in more customers. But he just waved me off. You don't understand business, kiddo. We can't afford risks. By fall, my paychecks started coming late. By winter, he told me, it's just temporary. We'll bounce back after the holidays. Except Christmas came and the numbers didn't improve. I started feeling that icy fear every time I opened my bank app. And Jerry, instead of tightening his belt, had bought himself a brand new truck. I confronted him, shaking with anger. How can you afford that when we can barely make payroll? He smiled that same smug smile that would later haunt me. Don't worry about it, I've got it handled. And I let it go. Again. Because I was too exhausted to fight, and because somewhere deep down I still believed he wouldn't let me fall. But he already had the knife poised. I just didn't know he'd already twisted it. Because 6 months later, I'd open my email and learn he'd sold me out. I thought the email and the Instagram posts were the worst of it. I thought that seeing Jerry smiling in my bakery holding champagne flutes with strangers was the pinnacle of betrayal. But the truth, when it came, hit like a freight train, leaving me gasping for air and questioning everything I had ever believed. It was 2 days after the initial shock. I had barely slept, alternating between angry pacing and staring blankly at my empty kitchen, wondering if I was hallucinating. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Hesitant, I answered. Hello? Is this Samantha? The tremulous voice asked. Yes, who is this? My name's Carla. I used to work at the bakery. I think you need to know something about Jerry. I froze. Every instinct screamed to hang up. But I couldn't. Something in her voice made me listen. He's been siphoning money from the business for months, she whispered. Even before you went into the hospital, the payroll, the supplies, he moved the funds around. He made it look like things were tighter than they really were, and the shares he signed over, he sold them the second he could. He planned this from the beginning. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. I wanted to curl up into a ball and disappear. But instead, I grabbed a notebook and began jotting down every detail she could remember. The Jerry, he's not just a thief, she continued. He's a con artist. I overheard him talking to the real estate agent months ago. He was celebrating how easy it would be to take the bakery out from under you. I couldn't breathe. Every little red flag I had ignored, every gut feeling I had brushed aside, it all clicked into place. The late paychecks, the sudden investments, the dismissive attitude toward my ideas, it wasn't incompetence, it wasn't laziness. It was calculated. Every lie, every delay, every manipulation, meticulously designed to ruin me. I stumbled to the bathroom and stared into the mirror. The reflection was unrecognizable. My eyes were hollow, rimmed red from sleepless nights and tears. My cheeks were gaunt, my hair unwashed for days. I touched my face and felt the deep lines of panic etched into my skin. And then it hit me, it wasn't just money. He had taken my dignity, my future, my identity. I called my father next. He had always trusted Jerry, always praised him as a responsible, savvy man. I explained everything in a trembling voice, the words spilling out like vomit. His reaction was worse than I imagined. Samantha, I don't know what to say. Jerry, your uncle, are you sure? Yes, Dad, I'm sure. He sold my shares. He's selling the bakery. He's lying to everyone. He's been planning this. I heard silence, then a faint gasp. I'll handle it, but this is going to ruin the family, Sam. Are you ready for that? I wanted to scream at him, tell him that family was already ruined. But I just whispered, I have no choice. The next day, I dug into the public records, half expecting to find some kind of mistake. There was none. Every document confirmed that Jerry had transferred ownership legally. Somehow he had manipulated the signatures from my hospital stay to finalize the sale. Every transaction, every contract, every detail pointed to premeditated deception. And the worst part? Other people knew. Carla confirmed that several employees and suppliers had suspected him for months but were too afraid to speak up. Friends who had seen Jerry post about his big investment moves online had congratulated him, blissfully unaware that their comments were essentially cheering my devastation. By the time I hung up with Carla, I felt hollow, as if someone had carved out my chest and left it open. My heart raced, my stomach churned, and I couldn't stop thinking, how could he do this to me? To his own family? I checked social media again. The comments under his sale announcement posts were a mix of envy and congratulations. No one had any idea that I, the woman who had poured blood, sweat, and tears into that bakery, had been systematically erased. I sank to the floor and curled into a ball. My hands were shaking so violently I thought I might throw up. And then, through the fog of anger and grief, a terrifying thought struck me. Jerry hasn't just taken my money. He's taking everything from me, my home, my reputation, my sanity. By the time I finally stood, knees trembling, I knew I had to confront him. But I wasn't ready yet, not emotionally, not strategically. I had to plan. I had to gather evidence. and I had to make sure he couldn't escape the consequences this time. But I also knew this. Once I started down that path, there would be no turning back. Because Jerry hadn't just betrayed me, he had declared war. And I had to survive it. I remember the drive to the bakery like it was carved into my memory. Every traffic light felt like it was mocking me. Every passing car made me feel trapped in some slow, torturous countdown. I was shaking, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles whitened. By the time I parked in front of the bakery, my stomach was a knot of dread and rage. I didn't storm in immediately. I watched through the window first. Jerry was there, laughing with a small crowd of the real estate agent, 2 new employees, and, most painfully, the barrister who used to call me boss. They were celebrating like he hadn't destroyed my life, like he hadn't stolen every ounce of my work. I took a deep breath, pushed open the door, and walked in. The room fell silent. Jerry froze mid-laugh. Well, if he isn't my favorite baker, he said, his voice dripping with that smug charm that used to make me melt. Don't, I hissed. Don't even try. He raised an eyebrow. Try what? I pulled out the folder I had been carrying: contracts, emails, bank statements, screenshots of conversations. This, I spat. Do you recognize these? Because they're every single move you made to ruin me, to steal my shares, and sell my bakery. His smile faltered for a split second. Then he shrugged. Technicalities, you sign those papers, it's legal, nothing personal. Nothing personal. I screamed, my voice echoing off the walls. I trusted you, I worked my ass off, while you smiled and lied and schemed behind my back. He laughed a low, cruel sound that made my stomach twist. You were naive, that's your problem. The crowd murmured, uncomfortable. Some were whispering to each other, finally realizing the tension. Jerry didn't care. He was a wolf in a bakery, confident in the chaos he'd created. I stepped closer, shaking but furious. You've destroyed me, Jerry, every cent I had, every ounce of trust, every dream, and you're smiling about it. He leaned back against the counter, the image of calm arrogance. Business is ruthless, Samantha, you should have known that by now. Something inside me snapped. I lunged forward, slamming the folder on the counter. Paper scattered like storm debris. Ruthless doesn't mean family betrayal, you're a snake, a liar, and everyone's going to know it. The real estate agent stepped in trying to calm me, but I ignored him. This wasn't about keeping peace. This is about exposing a monster. I pulled out my phone. I have every email, every document, every witness ready. Lawyers are on standby. I'm filing fraud charges, Jerry. You thought you could get away with it, but this ends today. Jerry's face strained of color. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something small and fearful. For the first time, I saw the truth behind the charm, the smiles, the family man facade. He was just a coward who preyed on trust. Sam, come on, it's not that. Don't you dare speak, I snapped. You sold my bakery, you ruined my finances, you pushed me to the edge of bankruptcy and depression, and now you're going to pay, publicly, legally, socially, you've crossed every line. By this point, my father had arrived, as well as a few witnesses from the bakery staff. They had seen the documents, heard the accusations, and their faces showed the shock I had been feeling for weeks. The barrister who once adored Jerry whispered, I didn't know. The authorities arrived just as Jerry started to sputter, trying to spin his story. But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank statements, contracts, witness testimonies all painted a damning picture of premeditated fraud and manipulation. Jerry's world collapsed in real time. His new employees stared at him with disbelief. The real estate agent avoided eye contact. My father shook his head, sorrow and rage etched deep in his face. I watched him pale, watched the arrogance melt into panic. Legal consequences would be swift. Financial restitution was inevitable. And socially, his betrayal had left him isolated, stripped bare for everyone who had trusted him to see. As the authorities led him away, his eyes met mine. No charm, no excuses. Just fear. And I felt nothing. Not yet. Because I had reclaimed my power. I had turned the knife he wielded against me back on him. And for the first time in months, I felt a spark of justice, bitter and sweet, burning in my chest. The first night after the confrontation, I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch with a blanket around my shoulders, staring at the wall like it might answer the question swelling in my head. How could someone I'd trusted so completely become so monstrous? How had I missed the red flags for so long? And most painfully, how do you rebuild a life someone tried to erase? Therapy was my first lifeline. I started seeing Dr. Mayers 3 times a week, spilling everything, the emails, the Instagram posts, the betrayal, the sleepless nights, the panic attacks. At first, it felt pointless. I would sit there trembling and say, I can't breathe, and he'd nod patiently, asking me to name one thing I could control. One thing. That question became my mantra. Slowly, I started. I began journaling. Every morning, I wrote down the small victories. I cooked breakfast for myself today. I smiled without forcing. I made a budget. It felt trivial, but each note was a brick in the foundation of my new life. Financially, the road was brutal. Jerry's legal battle dragged on months filled with lawyers, depositions, and endless court dates. But every document I had collected, every witness I brought forward, strengthened my case. I fought for restitution, not for revenge, though I wanted it, but to reclaim what was mine. I wanted to know that I could survive this and still win. Family support was complicated. My dad stayed by my side, helping with financial advice, coordinating meetings with lawyers, and simply listening when I cried. Some relatives, however, couldn't handle the truth. They avoided me, whispered about family shame, and even defended Jerry in hushed tones. I learned the hard way that recovery sometimes meant letting go of people you thought would always be there. I threw myself into baking again. But this time it was different. No longer a tool to prove anything to Jerry. No longer a way to make someone else rich or happy. I started a small home-based bakery, posting on social media, reconnecting with old customers who had followed Jerry's deceitful posts and reached out privately. The first order I delivered, a dozen cinnamon rolls to an old neighbor, I cried halfway through. It was the first thing I had made for me in months. Empowerment came slowly. I learned to say no to people, to situations, to lingering guilt. I learned that trusting someone didn't make me weak, trusting the wrong person didn't define me. I learned that betrayal could teach lessons no happiness ever could. The legal case ended with a partial restitution. Jerry was forced to repay the profits he had stolen and faced criminal charges for fraud. Watching him stand in court, broken and humiliated, was surreal. I didn't feel triumph, I felt relief. The threat had ended, and the rest was mine to rebuild. Physically, I started running again, channeling the lingering anxiety into sweat, pounding the pavement until my muscles ached. I started eating better, sleeping better, slowly reclaiming the body and mind that had been battered by months of stress and despair. Months turned into a year. The bakery is no longer mine, but I've started building something new, smaller but mine entirely. My mental health has improved, though the scars remain a reminder, not a shackle. Friends who had drifted away returned, impressed not just by survival but by the resilience it took to rise from the wreckage. I still think about Jerry sometimes. Not with love, not with lying. I think about him as a cautionary tale, how a person can hide in plain sight, how charm can mask cruelty. But I don't hate him anymore. Hatred would tie me to the past. I choose freedom. Now, when I wake up, I make a deliberate choice. I create. I work. I live. I laugh. And when I close my eyes at night, I don't see betrayal, I see survival, hard-won wisdom, and the knowledge that no one, not even family, can take my dignity unless I allow it. Life isn't perfect. The bakery is gone. Jerry is gone from my life. But the woman I'm today, scarred, wary, but fierce, is someone even he could never touch. And that, in the end, feels like victory enough.